Hello, welcome to the people, assuming the people are here. I'm thinking this is probably also going to be a little bit of a shorter one. I think this will probably be roughly 20 minutes or so. Not 20 minutes. Well, probably 20 minutes of discussion and then 10 minutes warning. And then we'll wrap it up at the half hour mark so people can enjoy their Saturdays. But I finished this book very late because we were supposed to read this last month in March, and I finished it like an hour ago. And I will say that while I didn't change my Goodreads rating from 5 stars because I don't think the book was actively worse, I did not enjoy the book the same way that I enjoyed it the first time that I read it. Can't lie. Can't lie there. Um, and it really wasn't until I was reading my review of the first book that I was like, yeah, I see why I gave it 5, but maybe it's really like a 4.5. Maybe it's a 4.5. I also will say that the first time I read this, it was for a video. And so when I was reading it, comparing it to other things that I was reading in that video, that could have been it as well. Because I also know that I tried to read Utopia Avenue for that video, and I had a DNF. And then Opal and Nev is still a 5 star. Still a 5 star. We read that, in February. And I haven't reread the Aaron Hahn, and I don't know if I would give the Aaron Hahn one 5 stars. But hello to the people. Hello, welcome. So this is probably 4.5, maybe a 4, maybe like objectively. But I did have a good time, and I did enjoy reading it the second time and seeing the characters and knowing that those characters were raggedy and getting to see them exposed as being raggedy. I did find enjoyment there. Can't say that I didn't. Definitely won't say that I didn't and find enjoyment reading about them raggedy people. I also think that having read it, I do think that you can definitely see. Really, could we? Thank you. You could see that this was a debut, and it was. And having read some just really bangers that were debuts, this is also a week. I'm really talking myself out of this 5 star rating. Anyway, I do think that there are definitely better debuts out there and definitely better books about a band out there. So that's where I am. I know you didn't read it because it had to do with the music industry. Although I will say that having reread it, I was correct in that, like, while yes, it is, it's also very not. Like, the industry aspect of this book, I think, is very minimal. And I do think that that hindered it a little bit because I was reading it the second time. I was like, okay, but could we do something here? Could we like could we get into it a little bit? Because I wanted more of it. It was very messy. It was very messy. But I also think that some of the mess was on purpose, but I think that some of the mess was because it was a debut. Maybe. Because like there were definitely some elements of the book where I was like, this just feels very obvious. Like there was a scene, I think it was like towards the middle. It was like towards the end of the book. It was like page 300 or something. And it was one of the like newspaper article, like the magazine article write-ups. And the write-up just ended on this like little ellipsis that doesn't make sense because all of the other excerpts that we've got fit the narrative that the Alyssa Arslan was trying to push that was happening in the story, that it was like expanding on an existing storyline, but this article just was the only article that was like randomly cut off and it would have continued. And it's just like, okay, but why are we ending the chapter like this? Like, so some of the mess was like fine, and we did get answers to what that article was like hinting at and like pointing toward. But I was like, this just feels very like, I want you to keep reading, so I'm gonna do this. And it just it kind of annoyed me this time. I don't even think that it registered the first time, but this time around I was certainly bothered by it. Didn't appreciate it, didn't like it, and I wanted better for it. I wanted better for the book. I also I liked that we got all four perspective, like all four of the girls got a moment to shine. I don't know if I needed all four. Don't know if I needed all four. Meredith, Miss Mary, um, I don't know. I didn't care for it. And then the character that I found like the most, like, I think if you could definitely see Alyssa R. Sloan trying to give Rose depth, and I appreciate her trying to give Rose depth. But even in Rose's perspective, I felt that it was still like very much we don't care about Rose. And it wasn't even it just it was very ambitious, I think, to come out with your little debut and give us a four perspectives in two timelines. That was very ambitious. Um, and I don't think that it worked. I definitely think that the editor should have been like, it's not working. Like the idea for it is there. The idea that this could work, sure. The actual execution, it was lacking. Specifically, I think with Rose and Meredith, and then Yumi and Cassidy, I thought were the stronger elements. But even in Cassidy's storyline, I was like, this is also just kind of lacking. Like, I understand that she's dead, but I think because Cassidy is dead, then there should be like a greater attempt made. I don't know if that's like the actual verbiage I want to use, but I felt that her chapters should definitely be more impactful than they were. Oh, of course not. I definitely didn't. Definitely didn't. And then at like especially towards the middle of the book, like once the after the events of everything with their first single coming out and they were working not their first single, the first album. Once the first album was out and they were working on the second album, and you were supposed to see Rose and Cassidy having like this little moment together and their relationship becoming more involved with one another. I was like, this isn't working because Rose is so flat, even though you're attempting to like give her some added dimension. It was happening too late into the story because we were juggling all of these other characters. And it wasn't even we were just getting like the girl groups, like that was fine. And the articles were fine. And the description of the music videos were fine. But when Soleil got a chapter, I was like, this is weird. Like Soleil does not need to get a chapter here. And I felt that Soleil's whole sub storyline where she was trying to like find out who her daddy was, I understand why you would include it because I understand that Soleil was conceived at the height of the glass, moment in the sun or whatever. But at the same time, it was very distracting from the other narrative. And I don't even think that we needed to have like this long drawn out process of, oh, why did Cassidy commit suicide? For me, I still stand by my first review that I wrote for the book. I'm not gonna write a second review or like do a second little video or anything, but I do think that the book is very much not interested in the why of Cassidy dying. It's more like she did. And thank you. Like when I was reading this book, Soleil really took over the book, and the little book of the month edition has like a little interview with Alyssa R. Sloan, and she kind of gives some explanation as to why she included Soleil the way that she did. But again, don't think it was necessary at all. It didn't feel like it was adding anything. It was definitely detracting from the narrative, specifically because we don't have these answers as to why Cassidy commits suicide. All the other people who are trying to like find answers about their situation feel a little unnecessary, like we don't need it. It's not if you're not going to answer this question, why are you going to answer these questions? Just give me the story. Just like give me these people who used to really who used to know this person who drifted apart and this is their life now and how this one singular event is impacting them. I don't need to find answers to all of these things. Like I don't need to find the answers to why Gloss broke up. Although why Gloss broke up is still so in that same interview at the back of the book, Alyssa R. Sloan talks about how she completed the first draft in like 2017. She'd been working on it for like 3 years. And then, like the Me Too movement came in. And so she started looking back and was like, I could add some of these elements to the book because it would give it depth and layers. But so sure. And I do think that there are definitely like real people who have suffered very um, similarly to how the characters in this little bookie book suffered. Definitely think there are people who exist who are like these people in the book. But some of the men in this book, some of the like actual actions that were happening, I was just kind of like, I don't want to say that I was like shaking my head or laughing, but the first time through, I don't think it really struck me as like peculiar. But this time through, I was like, this just it felt off. It didn't feel, um, I don't want to say it didn't feel real because again, I do think that you can find real life examples of all of these things. But when Cassidy went to her manager and said, "That man broke my arm," and the manager was like, "Yeah, well, you 2 need to just get over this." And I was like, "What?" Like, of like, of all the people of all the people who are behaving badly in this book, that was the moment where I was like, What? Who?" That just it felt a little that part particularly felt a little ridiculous. I mean, yeah, like, I wasn't surprised. Like, I do think that people could do this, but it was something where it was like the manager's like, "Yeah." And then I th I also thought that it was very strange. It I shouldn't judge the interpersonal dynamics of the girl group because without their messy interpersonal dynamics, I wouldn't have a book. But I do think that if part of me wants to say if the book hadn't been a dual timeline and we were just following the rise of this group and then breaking up, it would have been much more interesting because seeing the flashbacks from everybody's perspective would have been much more interesting than seeing these like 30-year-old women looking back at their life randomly because none of these people felt like very introspective. And I understand that you needed Cassidy to die for them to become introspective in some areas, but I don't even think that was highlighted all that well in the book at times. And so for me, it wasn't even just like, okay, all of these horrible things are happening, but it was like, there's four of you, all of these horrible things are happening, and like you are all still very isolated. And I think that seeing that play out would have been a little more interesting than seeing all of that stuff playing out and Cassidy just just being like deuces, peace out, I'm gone. I don't know. Like there's something about how that man broke her arm and Rose betrayed them or their little mystery secret sapphic lover moment. And then which I honestly I vaguely remembered there being sapphic content in this, and I was still gagged when they were getting together because I was like, "This doesn't even feel real, girl. Like, it feel like Rose is playing you. It did not, it never felt like Rose and little Cassidy were ever actually going to work out or be serious with one another. I was like, this doesn't even make sense, sis. Like, Cassidy was getting very invested and she was in it for the little midnight talks and the late night snuggle sessions. And I was like, I was like, "Girl, she playing." So, like, Rose betraying Cassidy was probably the only thing in the book that felt real, but I was also very much like, nobody else in the group realized this. Like, nobody in the group, nobody, like, nobody, nobody. And when Yumiko was trying to sit out here and be like, "Oh, yeah, I really thought it was Alex," I was like, "How? You saw him enter the house, you saw him leave the house, and you saw her leave with her arm fine. So where between her getting in the limo with this man and her getting to the hospital did she have time to be with Alex for him to break her arm?" I said, Yumi, Yumi, come on now. Come on now. I also thought it was very strange that the random third place contestant was his backup date. Because I said, in what world is the random third place contestant from a television singing competition from like 2 years ago just randomly also at the Oscars? And what designer is giving somebody who came in third place on fucking American Idol, the first season of America? Like, it'd be one thing if you were like Jennifer Hudson, who was on, I think Jennifer Hudson was on season 3 of Fantasia, right? So by season 3 of American Idol, they had a massive viewership. You could understand somebody renting a dress to Jennifer Hudson. But this, who even came in third place on American Idol season 1? Couldn't tell you. Don't know the person. So I said, in what world is this random television singer having a dress rented out to her by a noted fashion designer, their little fashion house? How did she have an invite to the Oscars to begin with? And how was she ready to be there the moment that this girl broke her arm? Like, all of that just made no sense. It would have made much more sense if he just came, like, he arrived solo, or if there was just like some random other person that she made up for the book. Like, because there were other people in the book who were just made up. Like, these people don't exist. So the idea, like, that also just took me out of it. I said there's no way you can convince me that the actual members of Gloss didn't know that that little boy broke her arm. And the fact that like, I understand that Rose was like out here pushing for the pushing, and she was like, we're gonna do it my way, we're gonna get her. Shout out to Nikki McKibben. Don't know you either, but hopefully you were at the Oscars 2 years after you lost. I doubt it, but maybe you were. Maybe you were. But so it's just like, you can't convince me that the little girls in Gloss didn't know that boy broke her arm. And then I understand that Rose was very much like, we're gonna be famous. But it's like, sis, you're already at the top of the game. Like, there's literally nobody in this fictional universe who is doing it better than you. And I understand, the powers and the pressures, but it's like, all four of you know this man broke her arm. You're not gonna convince me you don't. So four of you know this man broke her arm, and you are clearly doing better than he is. Like, he won a little TV competition, but y'all are the top of the ticket. Like, people are buying tickets for you, not for him. And so this idea that this and that was the other thing that was like really killing me, was like, this man is a nothing. Like, he's essentially a nobody, because you only have him touring, and not even the entire United States. You have him like pushed off to like 5 states, like a tenth of the country, you're willing to put him in. And suddenly, Mr. Random Country Singer is going to go open for the most pop famous people on the Asian leg of their world tour. Now, I was a baby in the 90s. I was a very small child in the early 2000s. But if somebody told me that they found some random nobody to go open for the fucking like Backstreet Boys, Instinct, that you had some random country singer opening for Britney Spears as she toured Asia and Australia, I would be gagged. I guess I have the power of the internet, so I could go look, but some of these things just literally didn't make sense. So I was just like, this man, 1, needed to be more successful, or 2, he needed to be in a genre that made sense, that was compatible, or he needed to not have I understand they wanted that history because Cassidy needed to have, like, a crush on him, but whatever, but I feel like that man could have been replaced by some new up and coming pop boy that they wanted to push, and not some random country man that was just gonna go singing on the Asian leg of a world tour randomly after they already did half the tour because he was added after they had already gone through half of North America and Europe. Yeah, it didn't like some of the book didn't make and again, I understand that the opening act is not going to be as famous, and I understand that you could have an opening act that is, a little different. Like there are definitely, at least today, there are definitely people who do country or like pop country, giving you those like Taylor Swift era vibes, who open for, mainstream pop acts. Like that to me is fine. But those people also aren't like only sent to 5 states. Like those people have mainstream radio appeal, and he's like, yeah, we're trying to do this and do that so we can broaden my appeal and broaden my image. And it was just like, sir, just go somewhere, just leave. Especially because again, you cannot convince me that everybody in that girl group did not know that man broke her arm. You just can't do it. You can try. The book tried twice. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe that he's opening for them, and I don't believe they didn't know it. And on some level, I don't think that for Rose to be as pushy as she was, you would think that one should be trying to get a better person. I mean, I guess he did just win an Oscar for like best original song. I don't really know if people care about the best original song Oscar. Like, I don't think anyone's going, "Oh yeah, I'm getting a ticket to that concert because the person who won an Oscar for best original song is opening for them." I mean, I don't think that's what's happening. Um, so yeah, don't think that's a real motivating factor for the girlies to jump in and buy concert tickets. But it's just foolishness. So you would think that one, Rose would be arguing to get a better opener, or two, that she would just not like Rose uses people to further her own success, and I don't think that man was propelling her further. And of the puppets in the group, I think that she was slightly more puppet master. And so again, it was another failing of the book because we only got the one side of that entire time from Cassidy's perspective. And not gonna lie, Cassidy was fully justified to leave them, fully justified to leave those little rinky dink people behind. And the fact that they were gagged had me gagged because even though Rose was trying to like act like that was the great love of her life, it was like, girl, you literally broke up with her so you could go on tour with the abuser. And the one of you was pregnant, so she was like 6 months pregnant, trying to go be Miss Christina Aguilera in Hong Kong. Like that's gonna work out for you. Like Cassidy could see that this is a sinking ship. Like honestly, I think that if Cassidy hadn't left the group would have crashed and burned. It would have like at least when Cassidy left, they were able to go out on a high note with like this little sad leg of their tour left. But overall, I don't think that yeah, she didn't owe them anything, and she was fully right to leave, and I'm happy that she did leave. Um, happy of all the decisions that this girl made that were poor, this was the only correct one. I will say that I did think it was a really bad how she handled that whole Alex situation was also a very it was pretty poor on her part. Can't lie there. Not even just, like, the fact that she let the rumors linger, like, that's whatever, but when she knew even, like, months before that happened, like, before they had the little Oscar tit tat, that she was not interested in that man. Girl, if you don't just break up, send that text message, like, but I also think that Alex was weird. He was very weird. He was a weirdo. He wasn't like Jerry, who was, like, criminally weird, but Alex was, like, definitely side-eye weird. And even Cassidy's, like, old Houston friends, they were slightly weird too. Cause I was like, "Y'all literally don't talk to this girl either." Like, that was, like, a whole big part of the story, was that they kind of fell out of contact, and then at a certain point, they only had contact through Alex. And so when they wanted to, like, call Cassidy up and start leaving voicemails and text messages, calling her all kinds of a bad person, which she was a bad person for what she did, but it's like, y'all literally don't talk to this girl. Y'all literally don't really know her. So for y'all to have the audacity to be ringing people up and leaving voicemails talking about how Alex was in a car accident and it's all your fault and you should be this, that. Ma'am, Miss Edie, Miss Joanna, if y'all don't sit down, if you don't just sit down, like, I understand that y'all used to be best friends 4 years ago, but I need y'all to take a seat. Needed them to take a seat and they didn't. So, even though I've talked a lot about, like, all the things that didn't work, overall, for what it was trying to do, I think it did do it decently. I do think that it handled those elements pretty fairly. And so I I think that I will, at least on my spreadsheet, I'm gonna lower it to like a 4-star rating. Because I do think that it definitely had a lot of room for improvement. But I would also read another book from Alyssa R. Sloan, which I guess doesn't really mean a lot because I've definitely given out some really horrible ratings and continued on reading. Um, but I would be excited to read another book by Alyssa R. Sloan after this. I don't know if she was gonna give us another, messy book because this came out in 2020, I believe, because that's when my book of the month has stamped on the cover. So it's been about a year, a little over a year, coming up on two. I think this was like an August release. Um, and so is it gonna tell me if I find the copyright page? Okay, this is like the most raggedy, yeah, 2020. So I would read another novel and I would be excited to read another novel. I would hope that it's another messy novel. I don't know if it needs to be in the early aughts. We could we could push forward. Although the early aughts were the better part of the timeline. They were the better part. Even though the early aughts had a lot of the holes that I wanted to see patched up, it was still better than the present timeline where these characters felt very unmoored and it felt like it only existed to give us answers. But this month, the book, of course, is Tokyo Ever After by Emiko Jean. This is the first book and apparently a series. It's at least a duology because there's a green one coming out at some point in the near future. Think it's this summer. Um, May does not have a book, and I think I have given up trying to find a book for May. So we will once again be taking the summer months off. So May, June, and July there will be no pick. We're gonna wrap up with Tokyo, and then we'll come back in August for the next set of books to end the year with. Um, so that'll maybe there'll be some new releases in May, June, July that your libraries will be able to get a hold of. So when we come back in August, we will hit the ground running because there are a couple of books that I have my eye on that I think I'm going to use. Um, but I don't know. Don't want to pick yet. So we're gonna read Tokyo Ever After this month, and then we're gonna take a little hiatus until August. So thank you all for coming out and in spending some of your Saturday with me. I'm happy you would also read another one from her. Thank you for spending some of your Saturday with me. Like I said, I want to keep this one a little short. So I'm going to let you guys go now. And I will see all of you in another video some point in the future. But until then, and until next time, bye.